I'd like to say that the effort that we're involved in now on scaling up nutrition is able to take flight because of the commitment of a number of key governments and individuals. Actually, many of the individuals are in this room, and I'd really like to be able to go through all of them, but that would not be perhaps appropriate. But it is right to refer to the Irish Hunger Task Force, which reported its results in New York in September 2008 in front of the United Nations Secretary General, with a very glittering cast of key people present at the report, including Tom Arnold, Bono and Bob Geldof. But the key thing about that Irish Hunger Task Force was it made it very clear that if we're working in food, we have to focus on smallholder farmers, on safety nets, and on nutrition, particularly nutrition in pregnant women and young children. The Irish Hunger Task Force had it right, and it was an incredible stimulus to us as we were working then with the Secretary General as trying to develop our responses to the food price rises of 2008. So thank you, Ireland, and thank you for your continuous engagement in this work. Around the same time, we had the United States of America, the then president, focusing on food security when he addressed the United Nations in 2008, and then going on with continuous commitment to this issue, right? And that then led on to the Feed the Future initiative, which has become a tremendous sign of US multilateral commitment to country-led programs for food security, and then with 1,000 Days to Nutrition. And this is a radical and wonderful approach from the United States government that has held us in place, with President Obama totally committed to it and setting up a whole new bureau inside USAID on food security, headed by Bill Garvelink. I think it's the first time a new bureau has been set up for some years. And the other thing about this new bureau is that it will outlast the Feed the Future initiative. It's a permanent structure. And just imagine it, inside USAID, we now have a unit that deals with the whole span of food issues, from agriculture and trade through to nutrition, and also including other issues like food assistance. And the fact is that this shows the kind of integrated and comprehensive approach that we all need. So thank you to the United States and to Ireland, not just for being here to support scaling up nutrition, but for the leadership and backing that you've shown in this enormous effort that's now underway to work on food security and nutrition. Is that all right? Yeah, fine. Thank you very much indeed. Just checking. Seeing as you started you started it off, so you get it, you know. Because I get deeply embarrassed with all this stuff. You know, just trying to make things work. There we go. I'd like to talk with you now about the Scale Up Nutrition movement, the roadmap that you've got in front of you, the yellow document, as well as the framework, which is the green document, available. I think both documents are available in 3 languages, and more to come. I'd just like to stress to you that the framework document is the basic strategic structure that we're working towards, and then the roadmap is the attempt to try to put that framework into practice. And what we'll be describing with you today is the link between the strategic document, the roadmap, and what we've been doing subsequently. And we've got here today, I should have mentioned this, a quite exciting agenda, which actually will give you all a chance to, if we've got the time, to hear about what it is we're doing on Scale Up Nutrition, to hear about some national efforts that are moving forward to scale up nutrition from Peru, Nepal and Uganda, and then to get a regional view from NEPAD, to get some issues on nutrition-specific interventions from some panelists, and the role of civil society. So we'll be having a range of panelists to talk with you, and an opportunity for you to ask questions. I have said to those who are organising this meeting that I am going to stop any kind of speeches at points and get the microphones rolling around so that you can raise any points you like. And if we're late for the dinner, we're late for the dinner. So why are we focusing on scaling up nutrition? Because we have seen such unsatisfactory progress towards MDG 1. And when we assess progress at the Millennium Development Goals Summit in September last year, the general impression was this is an area of global failure, particularly in relation to undernutrition and hunger reduction. And it was in relation to that that the framework was produced that we're talking about. And if you look inside the framework, what you see is the logos of many different NGOs, government bodies, private groups, and UN entities who have coordinated, who have endorsed this, and it shows that this is a framework that has wide support. It's not owned by anybody. It's not got a logo on it. If you look here, there's no logo of any particular agency that's involved in producing it. It was developed as a public good for everybody to use. And in the same spirit, the roadmap, which was subsequently developed, was also designed for everybody to use. And the reason why we need to act now, it depends obviously on your perspective, but we identified three. Firstly, there is international focus now on human rights as a basis for economic, social, and human development. And so there is very much a rights framework which underpins both the framework and the roadmap. Secondly, there's evidence that you've heard referred to already about the irreversible long-term effects of undernutrition in infancy and childhood on the social development and economic development of communities, households, and also on the potential of individuals. It's so compelling that for us not to act would be criminal. Thirdly, there's the widespread recognition that we actually have well-tested, low-cost interventions that can be implemented effectively. So here you are, rights framework to development, evidence that we've got a massive problem of millions of children who are affected by long-term underdevelopment due to early malnutrition, and a range of interventions that work and that can protect the nutrition of individuals. And that's what led to this recognition that we have to move forward. Now, the Sun roadmap that you have in front of you is designed for national authorities and development partners not to start activities, but to help them put their activities on nutrition into a broader international context. The idea is not a new program. The idea is to create a framework and then a process within which existing programs can be taken further to scale. And the idea is that country-led efforts will be at the center. Whatever a country wants to do and plans to do will be the basis of this work. And that means that country programs will determine how we move forward. But in addition, different stakeholders at country level, be they in civil society, in the private sector, in research organizations, as well as central and local government, will all have a place in this scaling up nutrition effort at country level. And the idea is to bring together as many different actors as possible into a national plan and strategy that is then implemented with close monitoring in order to demonstrate results being obtained. And governments and other stakeholders have been challenged to demonstrate results within 1,000 days of action. We don't want MDG 1 to be identified as an MDG on which we all failed dismally. And that's why we're putting emphasis on this 1,000 days, the next 3 years, to try to get progress by 2013 so that we can perhaps go into 2015 with some signs that there is movement in the right direction, even if we haven't realized the Millennium Development Goal. But we do anticipate that country-level progress can be demonstrated because we've got so much evidence from countries that they are able to get forward movement. There are 3 priority responses for scaling up nutrition. The important words are in bold on this. The first is, unless there is food security for all, scaling up nutrition gets very difficult. So we need to move towards worldwide food security. But then there is a set of specific interventions that have been identified in 2008 in The Lancet and have subsequently been well examined by many different organizations, specific interventions that will improve nutrition. There are about 13 of them, and they are well proven and costed. But the second point that we bring in is nutrition-sensitive and focused development. That is development programs that put nutrition outcomes at the center of their activities. If we can combine food security activities, nutrition-specific interventions, and a nutrition-sensitive approach to development, it's well possible that scale-up nutrition can achieve the results. We've seen evidence of this from countries as diverse as Vietnam, Brazil, and Ghana, but we have got other countries that are well moving forward in these areas, and we'll hear from them today. Now, the burden of knowledge relates to these interventions that I've already mentioned. You know all of them pretty well. They're identified here in this slide: the promotion of good nutritional practices, including breastfeeding, complementary feeding, and improved hygiene, increasing intakes of vitamins and minerals, from vitamin A and zinc through to micronutrients, deworming medicines, iron and folic acid supplements, iodized oil, iron fortification, and salt iodization, and then therapeutic feeding for malnourished children, and this is especially important, particularly the treatment of severe acute malnutrition and prevention or treatment for moderate undernutrition. These interventions work, provided they're adequately implemented. Now, in the Scale-Up Nutrition Framework, people are at the center of all considerations. We focus on action at the country level. We want to support it with capacity development, with global functions that can back up what happens at countries, with finance, and with better governance. And the way forward is to develop various different mechanisms that occur at these levels through the whole SUN process. This is described in the roadmap, and the work is underway. What's important, though, is that efforts of all stakeholders are coordinated, whether they're working at country level or supporting capacity development or globally. And in this slide, those of you who can see it easily, the key is these big arrows that go around in circles. We believe in the SUN movement, in country leadership, and in coordination of the action of all stakeholders, and we identify many different stakeholders who need to be part of it. We're not frightened of big numbers or slightly chaotic organization. What matters to us is that we're working together in one direction. And that is embodied in this slide, which shows the philosophy of SUN, which is joint working and evidence-based action. The joint working is all about a whole stack of emotional relations between us all, mutual respect, confidence, and trust, trying to minimize conflicts of interest, getting excitement around a common goal, and working together towards this goal with a single code of conduct. That is the emotional bond of joint working. But we link that with the science, with moving the numbers, stock taking and mapping, clear targets, and then mobilizing money and tracking progress. So that notion of the combination of emotion and science is key to SUN. Perhaps science is emotional, so that's a silly distinction. But anyway, you know what I mean. Now, we have a transition team that is taking forward this process of scale-up nutrition. Why is it a transition team? Because we will be anchoring the scale-up nutrition movement in a new governance structure. It just hasn't been developed yet. And so for the time being, the transition team is 13 individuals from different constituencies, supported by the Secretariat of the Standing Committee on Nutrition, meeting monthly. Several members of the transition team are in this room today, and I have the honor of chairing it. And its function is to encourage responsive, streamlined, and coordinated support for country-led action to scale up nutrition. Simple coordination with country-level stakeholders in control of what is happening, with easier arrangements for countries to access support, and then the support provided in as effective a way as possible. Some of you who've worked in nutrition for years know that we've tended to be fragmented in our way of operation. The idea of the SUN movement is, yes, we stay separate, but we work together as one, and we at all times see ourselves as supporting the countries. And that's why in discussions with country representatives here today, I have said, you will be shaping the SUN movement, we will be supporting you. And so the transition team will be moving into more firm governance and institutional structures, probably around the middle of this year. We have 6 task forces who are there to support scale-up nutrition action at country level, and these task forces are led by facilitators, many of whom are in this room, who have developed terms of reference, outcomes and indicators. These are going to come into the public domain very soon. The task forces are absolutely committed to making sure that SUN works. The first task force is about strengthening in-country capability, and the co-facilitators Bjorn Lundquist from REACH and Eileen Kennedy from Tufts University. The second task force is on communication for scaling up nutrition, linked with the 1,000-day movements. Venkatesh Manar of the Micronutrient Initiative and Werner Schulting of UNICEF are the facilitators. The third task force on civil society participation, trying to bring civil society into all aspects of SUN and making sure that we learn from their experience. Co-facilitators are Anna Lati from Ghana and Alex Rees from Save the Children. The fourth task force in the UK. The fourth task force is the development partners. There are 3 facilitators of that: Anna Taylor of DFID, Laura Burks of USAID, and Christoph Eiden from Germany. The fifth task force on engagement of the business community is co-facilitated with Tanuja Rastogi of the World Food Programme and Marty Van Leer of Unilever. And the sixth task force on monitoring, evaluation and reporting, the co-facilitators are in this room: Claire Shastri from the European Commission and Francesco Branca from WHO. And these task forces, over the last 3 months, have learnt to work together, or are learning to work together, in support of the countries. And as we decided yesterday, they will be very much helped by us having a reference group of the countries that are starting out in SUN. We're calling the first countries that are starting to work in the scale-up nutrition activity the early risers, or the early movers. I mean, you can see that what the idea is. And these countries will be the first to act. At least 10 of them have already identified themselves, and others are coming on board. To be an early riser, a country has to have a national champion who works between the sectors, a donor champion who will bring the development partners together, and a facilitation process for making sure there's a multi-stakeholder platform that's working effectively for scaling up nutrition. But over the period of the 1,000 days and beyond, we will develop effective longer-term support for scaling up nutrition. We will also be stimulating the SUN movement with a strong communications capacity, and then we will try to establish the new government mechanisms. That's a quick race through the scale-up nutrition framework, the approach that we're adopting in the roadmap, and the work of the transition team. I'd now like to stop my contribution to this and go back to our agenda. And in order to help that happen, I will encourage our Bill and William, who've kindly sat through that presentation, to take their seats in the body, and then we will invite others to come up here to be at the head and to help deal with some of your questions. But while that shift over is occurring, and I think my colleague Matt is going to help me, I'd just like to pick up a microphone. If we've got a microphone, does anybody want to ask any initial questions while we change over and the panelists come up about the points that, any of the points that I have raised? I'll go back there. So just to remind you, now what we're going to do is we're going to have some comments on what scaling up nutrition is what is happening to scale up nutrition in Peru, Nepal, and Uganda. And just to remind you, this is not a global project like the old kinds of global projects we used to set up in the UN. This is a movement where the leadership and drive comes from the countries. So basically, our colleagues from Peru, Nepal, and Uganda tell us what they're doing, and they can, as much as they want, tell us of their expectations from the international community. And then, in turn, we'll ask Bibi to tell us a little bit about how this all looks from her position in NEPAD, Mira Shekhar to talk a little bit about how it looks from her position in the World Bank, and Tom Arnold to give us a view of how it looks from his role in civil society. And while they're talking, think about questions you'd like to ask them or ask me, because we will leave space for some interactive discussion if everything works.